Hello, my name is Masayuki Akamatsu from IMS, the Institute of Advanced Media Arts and Sciences in Japan. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to the 2023 AIIF, Advanced Imaging International Festival. Until now, I have been creating interactive installations and audio-visual performances. In recent years, I have been researching how to express art through augmented reality, AR, and bicycle movement under the title of Reality and Mobility. To delve in deeper, I will be giving a lecture titled Artistic Imaging in the Age of Mobility, focusing on the artistic expression of photography and video through movement and locomotion. I will introduce several works concerning this theme and examine their significance and possibilities. Specifically, I will focus on moving subjects, moving cameras, and long exposure photography. I hope that this talk about artistic expression through mobility will provide you with some inspiration for your own works. Please note that I am using a speech synthesizer in this talk. First, mobility here refers to motion and potential mobility, as well as physical movement and change, among other things like walking, bicycling, and other forms of proactive movement. This mobility has great potential today and in the future. At the very least, there are many uncharted areas that, if addressed, can derive us value. If you think about it, we do most of our activities in a stationary state. It should be difficult to do something else while moving. In a car or train, you can eat, drink, or operate a smartphone. But you can only do so because you are stationary in the car, even though you are moving. However, this is not the case with walking or bicycling, where people are moving on their own. They cannot draw a picture or write a sentence. In the same way, mobile computing is not yet practical for operating a computer while on the move. So let me first introduce the pioneering work of Stephen K. Roberts. He began his attempts at mobile computing by bicycle and sailboat in the 1980s. His behemoth, Big Electronic Human Energized Machine, Only Too Heavy, 1989, was a recumbent bicycle with a trailer, solar panel, computer, LCD display, and wireless communication devices. He traveled thousands of miles on such a bicycle while writing and sending manuscripts to publishers. It is amazing how advanced this was at a time when laptop computers were too heavy and large to place on one's lap. Today, the same mechanism can be emulated by attaching a smartphone to a bicycle. However, it is still extremely dangerous to use it while riding a bicycle. In this respect, we realize that we have not actually progressed for more than 30 years. Next, let us take a moment to conceptualize drawing while moving. To begin with, we can think of pen on paper as drawing on the move. The same is true of electron beam raster scan displays, XY plotters, and robotic arms. The pixel map displays that are common today also use the same metaphor of moving a virtual pen. However, since finger and wrist movements are small and routine, we may not be aware of them as movement or motion. So let's replace the finger and wrist movements of drawing with larger physical actions. Shota Shiozumi, for example, did this on a bicycle. The BMX is a small bicycle that is well known for its ability to turn and jump, and for its trick play. A spray can is attached to the front wheel of this BMX, which sprays paint downward when the brake lever is pulled. The spray cans may be replaced to change the color. Although such techniques do not allow for precise drawing, it produces impressive results due to the body being in control rather than consciousness. At first glance, it seems like action painting, but the characteristics and limitations of mechanical mechanisms such as bicycle wheels and handlebars are strongly apparent. In other words, I think this can be called semi-action drawing by a human and a machine. He also took his BMX outdoors and drew on streets and in parks. In this case, he becomes aware of road surfaces, steps, installations, and buildings, and he will draw in relation to the environment and society. This can be described as the graffiti approach in the title of the work. However, he had to use water and line powder as he did not want to get caught by the police. There have been many attempts to plot and connect location information obtained by GPS on a map and present it as a large-scale drawing. This is commonly referred to as GPS drawing and is an electronic extension of drawing by movement. This can be done on foot for short distances, and for larger, city-sized areas, bicycles seem to be more appropriate from the standpoint of freedom and efficiency. There are also examples of island, continent, and global-scale drawings using cars, trains, and airplanes. Next, we will discuss the camera obscura. This device is the origin of today's camera and its ancestor. It is an optical phenomenon in which a small hole is drilled in a wall and an outdoor scene is projected inverted onto the opposite wall. Using this, painters were able to make their paintings realistic. For example, there is a theory that Johannes Vermeer utilized a camera obscura. Incidentally, camera means room in Latin, and obscura means dark. In other words, camera obscura means dark room. So what if this dark room starts to move? It takes quite an effort to create a dark room on a large bus by covering it with blackout curtains and drilling several small holes on the side. Of course, the bus drives around the city and fields, and passengers can see the scenery outside the bus. The projected images are inverted upside down so that the upside-down scenery flows forward to create a strange experience. This project has been implemented several times in Japan as a work of Tokihiro Sato Palsray Project, SUTA. Another example is a small dark room that was created and placed on a bicycle and ridden around. The artist, Kenji Mondon, envisioned an architectural model, so the small box was a building with a window in the wall. The window, or hole in the side, was larger, so the image on the opposite wall was not supposed to be clear. Even so, the images shifted as the bicycles rode by, giving us a vague glimpse of what was happening as they rode by. It is fascinating to see the room filled with soft and varied light, changing one after another. Various variations of buildings, windows, and rooms are being sought after. Note that these images were shot with a 360-degree panoramic camera. It is the camera that fixes the image obtained by the camera obscura principle onto light-sensitive paper, etc., and the fixed image becomes a photograph. This camera photography can also be considered as drawing by movement. The world's first book of photographs by William Henry Fox Talbot, one of the inventors of the camera, was called The Pencil of Nature. At the time of its invention, it took dozens of minutes to take a picture, which was similar to the process of human sketching. He called the photographic technique photogenic drawing. Early cameras took time to fix the light on the photosensitive plate. As a result, objects moving in front of the camera are not fully fixed, resulting in a blurry image. The same effect can be achieved with today's high-speed cameras by taking pictures with longer exposure times. Digital cameras also superimpose a series of instantaneous shots. In both cases, events are superimposed over time and any movement becomes a blurred trace. Long exposures often last only seconds, minutes, or even hours, But the longest photograph ever taken is the artwork Perpetuity by Regina Valkenborg, which was taken over a period of 8 years and 1 month. Such a photograph is commonly referred to as a solargraphy, but never before has it been taken over such a long period of time. She used a pinhole camera, a beer can with a small hole punched on it, and photographic paper inside. She forgot that she had mounted it outdoors, and 8 years and 1 month later, another person found it by accident. While this is a miraculous stroke of luck, considering the difficulty of keeping a digital camera in operation for more than 8 years, it seems that we can learn something from the simple trick of the beer can. Unlike continuous long-exposure photography, it is known that if the position of the sun is recorded at the same time each day for a year, it will form a figure 8. Japanese artist Hitoshi Nomura has managed to keep the accuracy of the phenomenon while expressing it as an aesthetic work of art. This is an astronomical phenomenon called analemma, but we only notice it when we can actually see it. If the movement is continuous over a short period of time, we can imagine its trajectory to some extent, but discrete and long-lasting phenomena are difficult to grasp both sensually and conceptually. Therefore, such an effort is significant, and the resulting depicted phenomena are highly impressive. In most cases, long-exposure photography is done with the camera fixed on a tripod. This is because moving the camera causes blurred images of stationary objects. But what happens when you move the camera more boldly? The artist Yoshinori Shibahara mounted a pinhole camera on a bicycle saddle facing backwards and inserted old-fashioned silver halide film. According to him, if you take the time to take pictures while riding a bicycle with this camera, the product will be a blurred picture where nobody can tell what is what because of the overlapping of various images. However, when the shooting conditions were adjusted, a clear image appeared. This image was taken at night while riding a bicycle on an urban street with an 8-minute exposure. The upper part of the image shows the traces of light from a street lamp, while the lower part shows almost nothing because of the darkness of the road. It can be seen that in this way, the traces of the moving and shifting landscape are recorded. As with the works presented so far, it is clear that interesting results can be obtained in difficult environments if the conditions are right. Instead of landscapes and the sun, now turn your camera to the stars and moon at night. Cities are difficult because they are bright even at night. But if you go to a secluded place, you can see the stars in all their glory. When a camera is pointed at the starry sky and a long exposure is taken, arcs are drawn around Polaris. This movement of the stars is actually due to the Earth's rotation. In other words, the stars are thousands and thousands of fixed pens, and the camera, or paper, is moving due to the rotation of the Earth. I used to take pictures of the starry sky with my smartphone mounted on a tripod simply for fun. One time, I accidentally moved the tripod, causing the camera to face a different direction. As a result, other arcs were drawn on top of the ones that had already been drawn. This is a unique and unconventional photograph of the starry sky. Furthermore, by moving the camera intentionally, various images can be obtained. However, moving the camera by hand lacks precision. I decided to use a motorized head with digital control. I found that moving the motor slower and in smaller increments than what is possible by hand produced some of the most interesting results that I never would have imagined. There are many possible variations of how to move the motors. I also used 2 motors to create more complex movements. Let's take a look at some photos of the starry sky taken in this way. The stars, usually marching in a well-mannered line, draw graceful curves as if they are dancing. Sometimes they move not in a continuous curve, but in a series of short line segments. Or they may contract and diffuse in short back-and-forth motions. They can also move in unpredictable, random, trembling motions. There may also be a clearly contrived dance to be seen, but it is not very interesting to me because it is too artificial. Also, if I shoot for too long, the motion characteristics have a tendency to be lost. When I'm able to capture a beautiful image by chance, it makes me want to dance for joy too. Smartphones allow the same effect of long exposure photography by adding and combining photos taken at short time intervals one after another. Moreover, since the process can be displayed on a screen, it is a great pleasure to see the image gradually taking shape under the night sky. This is similar to sumi nagashi or marbling. In sumi nagashi, you create a pattern, watch it change and spread, and capture it on paper at the moment you think it is just right. Shooting the starry sky is the same way, changing the parameters as you watch the image gradually appear, and when you stop shooting and adding to the composite, the work is complete. A digital camera that can take high-quality photographs may also be used. However, with a digital camera, the image can only be viewed after a long period of shooting. This may seem like a minor limitation, but to me, it makes a world of difference. I am not eager to take pictures with a digital camera that does not allow me to check the progress of the image. As I mentioned earlier, it is important to take pictures while watching its gradual composition live. In other words, I create my works as if I were playing with the stars at night. I was reminded of the ancient Greek philosopher Thales while taking these pictures. He was walking along, looking up at the stars, when he failed to notice a ditch on the side of the road and fell in. This was because he was completely immersed gazing intently at the stars to search for their truth. If he could etch into his mind the stars he saw as he walked, then I am working on replicating that exact image as a photograph. I named this series of works Thales' engraving, while the principle of both astronomical observation and photography is to stay as still as possible. Looking at and photographing the stars while in motion is a strange and unorthodox act. However, as a result, I was able to capture the appearance of stars that I had never seen before. Now, to return to the pen and paper analogy, the stars are the hundreds and thousands of pens, and the camera is the paper. The paper is attached to the earth and moves with the earth. In addition, the paper is also moved by two motors. In other words, all three movements are intertwined to create a complex movement. Of course, the motion of the earth and the motors can be accurately calculated and simulated. However, even a slight change in the parameters of the motors would change the result so drastically that I would not be able to foresee it. It is not a correct analogy, but this motion reminded me of the three-body problem in astronomy. In other words, it is a complex system that cannot be predicted. I imagined landing on a planet where the gravity of three celestial bodies interacted and photographing the night sky with long exposures. More importantly, the actual shooting is different from the simulation. This is because the pen is not just the stars. In the night sky, airplanes fly, satellites cross, and shooting stars streak across. The red dotted line is the plane's anti-collision light. Shooting stars are short lines and satellites are long lines. Among satellites, the ISS and CSS shine quite brightly. Recently, many Starlink satellites have appeared. Not all night skies are clear, and clouds often appear in the sky. When clouds cover the sky, they hide the stars, and when they pass, the stars appear again. Of course, clouds should not cover the entire sky, but sparse clouds moving in the wind can produce interesting results. As the title of a novel says, the moon is a harsh mistress. The moon is so bright that the other stars are relatively inconspicuous. Moreover, the clouds illuminated by the moon are also bright, so the picture becomes one not of the stars, but of the clouds. Still, this does not mean that you cannot take a unique photo with the moon as the main subject. Also, a large green light trace remained on the image. I had no idea what it was. One night, a green light crossed in front of me. Can you guess what it was? It was a firefly. Some people who have seen these works have told me that they are a kind of generative art. Generative art is the creation of images and sounds through programming. While in ways I can agree with this opinion, there are a few lenses through which this can be shown to not be true too. This is because, while most generative art is created solely by computers, this work relies heavily on external elements such as cameras, motors, and starry skies. Also, the creator of generative art is an omniscient, omnipotent God who controls the work and creates it as he or she intends. What I do, on the other hand, is set things up so that some kind of result can be achieved, and then take in the state of things as they emerge. In other words, I am not God, but a farmer or fisherman who harvests the bounty of nature. Over the course of 4 years, over 1,000 works were photographed in this way. This is an inefficient photography production method, as there are few nights with good weather, and at most only a few shots can be taken per night. Regardless, how to evaluate the gradually increasing number of photographs was a thought-provoking question from an aesthetic perspective. How should I interpret them? What criteria do I use to select and discard them? Is it a subjective judgment? And so on. This is a difficult question. Therefore, if it were an exhibition, the reluctant solution would be to determine the number of points according to the size of the venue, and select as many as possible to make the variation as diverse as possible. My favorite way to display them is to print the photos on transparent acrylic panels and show them through the daylight. It is a strange feeling to see the stars, which are originally nighttime stars, shining as bright lights in the daytime. It was also fascinating to see the changing expressions of the acrylic photographs as the ambient light shifted from sunny, cloudy, and rainy days to the morning, noon, and evening. One gallery also used video projectors to project images on all 4 walls. These images were moving images of thousands of photographs taken at short time intervals for long exposures. Transparent acrylic panels printed with the photographs were then hung from the ceiling and allowed to rotate slowly. The acrylic panels reflect and transmit the images from the projector because of the translucent starry sky. Now please take a look at the exhibition. The created image or video can be displayed on a head-mounted display such as the Apple Vision Pro to view the spatial image as if looking around you. Smartphone cameras only have a wide angle of view of about 120 degrees at best, so it is not a true virtual dome image. However, when the image is attached to a virtual dome, it is as if you are looking up at the vast night sky and seeing the trails of stars. Recently, I have been shooting with a 360-degree camera. This allows me to capture the entire area of the starry sky. However, the surrounding mountains, trees, and lights of houses are also captured. Although they are not necessary, it may be possible to harness them to produce an interesting effect. In addition, the images could also be displayed in a planetarium. This can be said to be the same as the experience with a head-mounted display, but the actual dome space gives a much stronger sense of impact and immersion. This video is an advertisement for the exhibition in a planetarium, and I'm considering producing it as a work of art. Another thing that seems worthwhile is to invite people to the actual shooting site. As I have already mentioned, it is exciting and fun to see the images that gradually emerge through additive compositing. I think the process is even better than the final photograph. So, it is a great pleasure to share it with others. The most beautiful starry skies can be seen in places far from cities and human settlements. The most difficult thing for you may be to reach such a remote place. However, as Thales did in ancient Greece, it is only under the stars that we can forget ourselves and gaze at the stars. As we have discussed, imaging on the move creates a wide variety of expressions, and it also validates the possibility of true mobile computing or digital activity on the move, which has not yet been realized. This is because it is not a canvas fixed to an easel or a camera on a tripod, but a new medium that dances lightly with the wind. From this perspective, I had the pleasure to give this talk titled Artistic Imaging in the Age of Mobility Today. Thank you very much for listening.